I've been in a situation where they just didn't trust me because of how I looked. I was a threat, because of how I looked, the skin color. I had, once I learned how to let them know that I was not a threat, those ended up being some of the best clients I ever had. We could kind of talk about things that they probably wouldn't normally feel comfortable talking to, a person of color. So I had to learn that stuff, and I had to learn it quick. And once I figured out that aspect of things, I could go in, I could sell, right?
Welcome to the Roofing Success Podcast. I'm Jim Aline, and I'm here to bring you insights from top leaders in the roofing industry to help you grow and scale your roofing business. Ted Sellers Roofing, how are you today, man?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing well, man. Another Minnesota transplant like myself. So let's talk about your story, man. How did you get into roofing?
So I used to be in the marketing role. I worked for a couple of roofing companies, and there was this particular roofing company that I did some work out of Forest Lake. He had been in the business for quite a while, and one day, he was like, "Why don't you do this yourself?" And I'm like, no, So we kind of went about, and eventually, he reached out to me again, and I remember he was like, "Just give it a shot, and we'll do a couple deals and see how it goes for you, right?" So I ended up following through with that, and it, all of a sudden I was like, "Hmm, I might be pretty good at this." And then, it just kind of started from there. I had already had a platform, and I was bringing in my own leads, and he was in, Forest Lake, and I was closer to the city, so I was getting a lot of leads out of the cities, which at the time he couldn't really get. And I just kind of started growing from there. My first year I did great. My second year I did really good. So that's kind of how it kind of started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's why we connect so well as, we both came from the marketing side, right? There's not
Right.
as many of us that come from the marketing side and take the leap into the space. So you moved here from Georgia.
Mhm.
You were in that around that time. What year did you move here from Georgia?
So originally I was born and raised in Georgia, and then I ended up moving to Florida. I was there for a few years, actually Tampa, and then I ended up moving here in 2011 is when I moved here.
Okay.
And
So about 3 years after you moved here is kind of when this started to.
yeah, yes, correct. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
So about 3 years after you moved to Minnesota, not knowing as many people, made some friends and, hey, you got some leads? How do you get in those leads, man? What was some of those, we'll talk about those early days of leads. What did, like, think times have changed, but back in those days, what was that like? What was the thing? What was the thing that was like, man, I can make the phone ring. I know how to do this. What was that?
Um, for me personally, I kind of looked at how everybody else was doing doing their process and so forth, and I just decided to make it more of an educational thing. So, like, a
Mm,
lot of my funnel would come from my blogs, and because a lot of times what happens is people, they kind of want to know what they're getting themselves into, right? Like, they want to know the process, the different things that happens and so forth. So a lot of times what would happen is people go read the blogs, and then I get those folks. That was one funnel. The other funnel, a lot of it came through Google My Business. I just made mine really, like, completely stand out dramatically versus others. Is what I did.
and so blog content, so educational content. That's,
Mhm.
that's my man, Marcus Sheridan. I don't know if you've listened to the episodes I've had with him or read his book, They Ask You Answer, like, man, that's the core of it, right? Like answer the questions that your customers are asking, right? And that was a decade ago,
Right.
that you started doing that, right? And
Yeah.
it's still but it's still true today. Those are some of those truths. And the other truth is that your Google business profile is still as important or more important now, right?
Right.
Like, how is
Right.
that how had okay, so started with the educational content, then you get into now you own the business. Now you gotta manage the jobs, you gotta do the business side of roofing. Um, how did that change your mindset from a marketing perspective? Did it change your mindset, or did it give you additional context to help with the content you were creating? How did that path go?
I think it kind of did a combination of both, if that makes sense. Um,
Yeah.
I think being an owner, I think it made me realize more, how important it is to have that educational content out there. Because, what I have figured out on my end at least is that education content sometimes will have people further along in the funnel versus, you know, um, being in that stage of I'm not so sure. And I think
Mm,
people y- they kind of have a that trust is there more of, because they know
yeah,
you kind of know what you're talking about, right? Like, um, but as a business owner, it has been a big task because you're trying, you're doing the business and then you're doing the world that you come from, marketing and so forth. But I think also it's giving me a huge advantage over my competitors,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. It's that ability, and it has that ability. Did that ability feel natural to you in the sales process as you moved into selling roofs?
Yeah,
Like, was
actually, yes, it did. It actually made the the sales part, it made it, easy, and that became extremely natural because of the fact that the marketing aspect of, what I um had accomplished there. Sales became very natural to me because of the marketing background.
yeah. In those first couple of years, I always think about, and I say this on the podcast a lot, and you know, but I always feel like when we start a business, it's kinda we have different goals than we have later on. And the first goal is I need to pay my bills,
Right.
right? Like, I just gotta get I'm just trying to get the bills paid. What were those get the bills paid days like for you guys? For you?
Um, in the beginning, it wasn't, too bad. When me and my business partner got into the business, it was kind of unique because we came in, and it was at a stage where, in my mind, I'm thinking we're gonna go through some. You're gonna learn the good and the bad, at least get a chance to do that, right? But with us, what happened was when we got into the business a year later, we had that massive storm,
Mhm.
and I had the sales team, and it we got to it became challenging because we had so much business going on, and just understanding the different processes and things that come with it. Um, and as far as like the bills and so forth, it wasn't that challenging until we got that massive amount of business, and
Yeah.
and
So
things started
so
to
that's what
become
happens when the storm hits, right?
yeah,
Like, it's in storm restoration markets, you gotta be ready.
right,
Yeah, because
right.
so what were some of the key lessons you learned in that first storm? Like, what
Um,
were some of the things that were like, "Man, we didn't know this and we found out fast."
I think from a business owner standpoint, what I didn't know until that point was when you have a massive pipeline like that, because I didn't have to deal with this being a sales guy, right? The money comes in slow.
Mhm.
And that was kinda a surprise. That was an element of surprise, right? Because I didn't know. And I think if I had to do it all over again, I probably would have capped things off where I didn't get have this massive pipeline and this massive amount that I had to fulfill. I think I would have, like, kind of said, once we get to this number, I'm gonna stop and focus on this versus, being a sales guy that, just getting bigger, 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 bigger. So I
Yeah.
think for me that's what I would have. done a little bit different. Yeah.
So not especially not understanding the cash flow cycle.
Right.
It sounds like it was like, "Oh, we're out here selling. We could sell it." And
Yeah.
you gotta but that cash flow cycle, how do you prepare for that now since you've been through those
Um,
lessons?
I think now that, the fact that we have a better understanding of that, um, we kind of like to schedule our jobs in the beginning of the month to allow our terms to kind of play themselves out.
Mm,
I think now we pay way more attention to, what insurance is actually what they're paying for, making sure that we're not missing things on our end, because when you are that big, you're trying to get things, make sure the client's happy, get their job done, and sometimes you just miss stuff, right? And you end up shorting yourself. But now, we have a lot of processes in place to make sure that we aren't missing things. And like I say, scheduling is very different now versus how we did it before.
that's interesting. I haven't heard anyone talk about scheduling
Mhm.
from a perspective of almost cash flow management, right?
Right.
Like, speak to that a little bit more. I think that would be that's interesting, man. That's an interesting, strategy that
Right.
you're putting
Right.
in place there.
Right.
Yeah.
I think you know just doing my research, and I have a couple mentors that's in the industry. A lot of times, just talking to your supplier and understanding the product, because every supplier, they all have their different strategies as far as like how they want
Mhm.
things to be as far as being paid. Just having those conversations with them and understanding how to utilize your full terms, right? Like, if you're just doing jobs every single day, and that 30 comes up,
That's
that
right.
they want their money, right? Like that's just
They wa
that's how it
Uh-huh.
works. But if you are, scheduling all your jobs that first week, of the month, when the first of the next month you actually get that full 30-day period. A lot of guys don't understand that if you wait 15, if you're doing jobs every day and it's day 15 of the month, right? Um, and then the first hits, you got to pay that bill. So just
Yeah.
understanding how your supplier works, I think it's
Yeah.
important. And that's something that
Have you
I had
sat
to
down
really.
yeah, have you sat down with your suppliers and said, "Hey, this is our cycle, this is your cycle, how do we make our terms how do we make the terms fit our businesses better?"
Yes,
negotiated your
I
terms and things
yes,
like that?
I've sat down with all of our
Yeah.
food suppliers just to understand how to utilize our terms to benefit
Yep.
us and them. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And so that's the thing, I think some things that people don't think about early on or, in business a lot of times it's, have the conversations.
right,
We're all everyone's working towards the same goal,
right, right,
right? Like, everyone wants more roofs sold, more roofs built, and more more materials sold, more labor, everyone wants more. So, when we I think if we approach these relationships that, like, that like, we're all going in the same place, man, like, let's see how we could get there faster, easier,
right,
in a better play, in a better way for all of us. That's something important
right.
to think about. What other early lessons changed how you thought about things?
I think bringing the right people or working with the right people. I
Mm,
think that's been something that I had to learn. Being a business owner, and not being afraid to take chances, right? Like, because if you bring in, 10 sales guys, you might have three, maybe four that are actually gonna be good and be faithful, right? But just bringing the right people um, around. And honestly, I think the biggest lesson I could say is having a good accountant.
mm.
That we had to learn the hard way. and they have to understand the industry, right? Like you can't have
Yes.
a accountant who does everything. You want to have an accountant who understands construction or roofing because if you don't, that will get you in a real tricky situation. And we had to learn that the
What
hard way.
what lessons did you learn the hard way? Like, I'm assuming that you hired an accountant that
Mhm.
just didn't understand
Right. Just
the
making sure
business.
like things are labeled properly, like
Mm,
from an accountant standpoint, right? Like
mhm.
if you have an accountant who doesn't understand that aspect of things and they're just laboring things,
Yep.
you know, Uncle Sam, they gonna want their money. So just I think if you are going to get into this industry, I think the most important thing before you start anything is a good attorney and a good accountant. Those two can be your best friend. They can make you or break you. And
That's right.
yeah,
I've said on the attorney side, I've said this on the podcast a bunch too, but, like, I had a friend of mine who was an attorney and, for in the construction space, and he said, "Jim, you know why they call them contractors? Because they work off of contracts."
yep.
And it was like, "Oh, yeah, so if you don't have a good contract, you you know, and you're not making sure to adhere to that contract, and that, like, you could run into some big, big problems,
Oh yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
and if and then on the other side of that, if someone you do work for feels like you didn't adhere to that contract, right? If that contract is not laid out well,
Mhm.
the that judge could decide if
Yep.
you adhered to the
It sure
contract,
can.
right? And so,
Sure
and
can.
this is a tough industry with,
Yeah.
there's a lot of moving parts, man, and it's like
It
there
is, it is. It's definitely been we've had our challenges from, learning that stuff. We're one of the few black-owned roofing
yeah,
contractors here in the cities.
yeah,
There's been some challenges with that. Um, you know, but we've learned a lot and we've gotten through a lot of different challenges. But you're always
yeah,
gonna have those, right?
yeah, yep.
So so
Let's
yeah.
talk about that a little bit. We were I don't know, the way you were telling me about it is you're like, "Yeah, we don't look like roofers."
We don't. We do not look like roofers, and I it's unique, but it's different, and there's a
Yeah,
lot of positive and there's some negative, because
yep,
I think sometimes people have a certain expectation of what they assume you know the roofer is gonna look like, if that makes sense.
yeah, yep.
So,
So let's
but
talk let's dig into that. Like, so as as an African American man in Minnesota, like, there's what have been some of the let's look at it from both sides. Like, look at it from what some of the challenges that have, that we don't look like roofers. Like, this is, when we're going, I think we talked a little bit about going door to door and, knocking doors and things like that. And then, you know, what, what's, what's the other side of it? What are the opportunities or what, can, how maybe can an opportunity like roofing change opportunities for people in you know African Americans or minority communities and things like that because there's such an opportunity in this business. So let's start with the challenges. What are the challenges that you've faced in the industry or in sales or whatever it is based around this?
so when I first got into the business, once I really started to put 100% effort in it, I had to
Yep.
really understand my environment, right? So, um, You know, I've always been the way I see myself and the way other people see myself. There's a difference there, right? But
Yeah.
I kind of had to. I had to go. I had to like process this and really think about it. And it's kind of crazy, but like when I would meet with a client, I had to think of right away. I got to let them know I'm not a threat, right? That was the first thing. I had to diffuse them, and just letting them know I'm not a threat, letting them know I'm there to help them. There's I had to let them know that, and go out and beyond so that they would understand. Because I think Minnesota is kind of unique, when it versus like a Georgia or Florida, for example, right?
Yep.
Those places you gonna know right away if there's a issue. In Minnesota, it's a little bit different. The Minnesota niceness, you don't you have to people aren't gonna be as blunt, but they just sometimes people I've been in a situation where they just didn't trust me because of
Mm,
how I looked. I was a threat, because of how I looked or my skin color.
yeah,
Um, so, I had once I learned how to let them know that I was not a threat. Those end up being some of the best clients I ever had. We could kinda talk about things that they probably wouldn't normally feel comfortable talking to, a person of color. It just so I had to learn that stuff, and I had to learn it quick, and once I figured out, that aspect of things, I could go in you could take me anywhere in the state of Minnesota, and I could sell, right? But when I
yeah.
first started, because I didn't understand that, that was a challenge for me. It would make me feel a certain kind of way because I didn't realize until doing it enough to understand that these people aren't familiar with, you know, they don't
Got
see a
it.
lot of people like me and so forth. So,
So it was maybe initial reactions or something that made you
yeah,
feel like, "Oh, wait, this is the reaction I'm getting is different right
right,
now." And so what you've learned is I'm paraphrasing and tell me if I'm wrong, man, like,
yeah,
if but, like, I'm paraphrasing, but, like, you you've been out there enough now that you recognize that reaction
right, right,
more, right? And it's like, "Oh, I know what you're I know that you don't talk to people that look like me very often."
right, exactly.
Right, like
Point out, right,
right,
right on point,
right,
exactly.
like,
Yeah,
so let me start over here. Let me
right.
start my sales process over here,
Yep,
and I think about that. I mean, you're a marketer, right? So, like, we gotta maybe they're a little more top of funnel,
yep,
like,
yep,
we're
yep. Yeah, yeah,
a little more top of funnel. We gotta educate them a little bit more,
yep,
in that, right?
yep, yep,
Um,
yep. Now on a
you
on
know,
a
it
on a on a
yeah,
on a on a positive note, you know, there's been situations where, we've had people reach out to us specifically because we are of color, right? And
yep,
that's something that I didn't really when I first got into the business, didn't really, you know, realize that that was a thing, right?
yeah,
There's a group of people out there that will specifically use us because of, how we
yeah,
look, and
yep,
that's just
yeah.
not people that look like me. It's people of different, multiple different
Yeah,
races
but
just 'cause
people that have a they have a mission in their heart that they want to help
right,
minority-owned businesses
right,
or, they wanna help, like, and so and I'm sure that that's not the norm, it's not all the phone calls you get, you know what I mean? But
right.
it is I think that's good to know for
Yeah,
people that there are, like, yeah, it's you run into you run into the people that have a negative reaction sometimes, probably more than you do the person calling for um, for that, but, um, yeah, man, it's interesting. So, for other African American men, women that are thinking of, like, "Hey, if this might be an opportunity for them," what would you say?
I say I'd say jump on it. Don't be afraid,
Yeah,
you know. Don't be afraid of the challenges because they're gonna come, right? But there's gonna be a lot of positive if you hang in there. You know,
Yeah.
I'd say, understand your market, who you dealing with,
Yep.
whatever, if it's Minnesota or California, just, understand it and use, who you are as a, as an advantage to get to different places.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I grew up or a lot of my life in California. I think I told you, like, I lived in Northern California. It's like one of the most integrated places in the country from
Right.
all the Asian communities and Mexican communities and Central America, South America. Like, it's one of the most but it's a strange thing, even there, that even within like in Southern California specifically, like Orange County is very well known to be, kind of more of the white community and like but even and this is a little off topic, but even in the Mexican communities, the Mexican and black communities in Southern California, there's some tension
Yeah.
sometimes there too, right?
Right.
Like,
Yep.
and so it's very strange to me why. I mean, it's crazy to me, man. Like it's but I think it does come down to you just don't experience each other enough,
Right. Right.
right?
Right.
Like, I think that that's so. Before we carry on with the episode, let's give a shout out to one of our sponsors. Roofers, let's get real. You're great at building roofs, but are you great at building a steady stream of leads? That's where Job Nimbus Marketing comes in. They know the roofing industry inside and out, and they'll help you dominate Google, Facebook, reputation management, and everything in between. If you want more quality leads, more booked jobs, and more growth, visit the link in the description or the sponsors page on the Roofing Success Podcast website. I talk to contractors every day that feel stuck. Not because they're not working hard, but because they're missing the structure to growth without chaos. Or their culture's falling apart because their team's unclear, unaligned, or just burned out. And when change hits, they're reacting instead of leading because time and priorities aren't under their control. Day 41 Thrive helps to fix that with proven strategies for growth, culture, and leadership that actually work. Ready to thrive beyond the storm? Visit the link in the description or visit the Roofing Success Podcast website on the sponsors page to start your journey today. Like, I think that that's so that like we just don't experience if you don't experience people of other nationalities and things like that or races or anything, like if you just don't experience them enough, it's like you only get the preconceived notions. You only get the media content, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like
Right.
media
Right.
view of people, or you get the stereotypes, right? And so,
Right.
man, it's so it sucks that you had to go through some of that stuff, but on the other end, it's you're it's a great thing too.
Right.
Um,
One of the
that
one of the
yeah.
things I will say though, so when me and my business partner got together, we started the business, and we got to um, year 3 because again, we don't look like your typical roofers, so you have to go through these processes of thinking outside the box to make yourself completely unique and more qualified, and
Mm,
and make sure you have
mm.
the right, crews and so forth. So what we did, and again, I didn't know this until we got in, but we decided that we were gonna go the route of being union. And right now, if I'm not mistaken, we are we are the only African American roofing company, I believe, in the whole state of Minnesota that is union.
Okay.
And I think we had to we went that route because we wanted to make sure that we had that extra layer of um, trust with people. We
Got it.
and specifically like in the restoration, Helen, like your storm restoration. I don't think there's any. union companies that does that kind of work in the cities. And I think that you know, with us adding that element to our company, it really like some of those challenges that we were kind of talking about earlier kind of are not there as much because the fact that
Yeah.
we're union now and our quality of work is extremely um
So,
good.
can I tell you something that I hear in this? Like, something that I hear in this is that you've intentionally, built additional trust factors
Yeah,
into the business.
correct.
Now, like, to me, that it's like you did that with because you felt that you like, okay, people may, may look at us a different way, so we're gonna build all of these additional trust factors in. Boy, that creates a competitive advantage.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it really does, man, and I don't maybe you did it from the place of we don't look like other roofing companies, but every roofing company should do those additional things, right? Because
right,
otherwise
right, right,
you look like everyone else, like, or,
right.
like you're just it's such a commoditized industry
Yeah,
that I don't know if that's what it sounds like that's what kinda sparked that road,
that
but man,
yeah.
the outcome of it is probably what we've talked about it a little bit in the past is like, man, this is pretty cool. Like, this is
Yeah,
so
yeah,
so build
yeah.
trust, right? No matter who you are, I know I've had a lot of, guys on that have come from the labor side, right?
Mhm.
Um and they had those same feelings, right? Like, "Hey, I'm an immigrant, I'm Mexican, you know what I mean? They had those same things like, "No, like, people look at me like I'm supposed to be on the roof, not supposed to be at your kitchen table," right? And they
Right.
and overcoming that and building those, other additional layers of trust. I think that's a fantastic lesson for anyone
Yeah.
also, right?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
and you've done a fantastic job with it. So let's talk about this union thing a little bit more, man, because like most people are not like, hey, let me sign up to pay union wages.
Right.
Like
Right.
it's
Yeah. So
um,
when we first started, I was like, "Ooh, you know, this is gonna be a challenge because not every company can just go join the union. It's actually a legit like
oh yeah,
process. Like they are interviewing you. I mean, it's a lot behind it. And it's different, and they are. There's a lot of things that are in place to make sure that we're doing things the right way, right? Like making sure our guys are paid properly. I mean, that is there's a lot of situations where these subcontractors are not getting paid. Are they not getting paid on time? There's a lot of other
mhm,
factors that come into that, and you know, a lot of things could go wrong when you're not paying your subs. Um, but we did it for two reasons. It was the trust aspect of things, and then we also learned to get involved with working, with larger general contractors and doing state and federal jobs, right? Because you almost got to be union to do those
yep,
projects.
yep,
But at first when we started going through the process, and I mean, there's bonding that comes into play with this stuff. I mean, there's a lot of pieces. I was like, oof, I don't know. This is a lot. So, but now, it's we haven't had to knock one door. It's just been people
wow,
going online, specifically looking for companies like us to do work.
yeah,
And I just it's like I said, it's that extra layer. That's an extra layer of trust. I didn't realize at first. I didn't understand. I didn't realize how valuable it was, but I'm starting to realize it now. It's very valuable. So
yeah, and that's an interesting one. Like, so it started from a place of, oh, okay, let's try to build trust. But then what it does, and this is, different even in even bring it back to context for people across the country where some states are licensed states, some states are not, right? And so in the states that are not, like Texas, boy, it's, pull up in your Honda Civic and with a ladder and you're a roofer, right? And
Right.
so there's no there's no barrier to entry. And then you get into states like Florida who have pretty strict contractor licensing requirements and then you add layers as these layers get added of it creates additional barriers to entry, and that's what I'm hearing on the union side, is that it has you didn't know that this was going to happen, but it created a competitive advantage.
Right.
You thought about it in terms of, "Oh, it'll help us look more trusted," but then all of a sudden you started getting phone calls that were like, "Hey, you're a union company, we want you to come out."
Right.
And this is, we're in a union state, man. I told you my dad worked for the mines in northern Minnesota, which are very strict union. In the early '80s, you were not allowed to drive a foreign vehicle
Yes.
onto that parking lot.
Right.
Like, that's how strong people feel about it,
Right.
um, about that, and so this may not be the same competitive advantage if you're down in Texas.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Right? Like,
Right.
it might
Right. Exactly.
we have a different buyer avatar up here, right? We got a
Mhm.
different person that we're marketing to, and a lot of those people are very union-focused people, which, they grew up in a union or their families were in unions, and
Right.
and that's a big part of the way people want to buy up
Right.
here. It threw me off too when we were talking about it last week or whatever. I was like, I think about it from the commercial side,
Right. Right. Right.
right?
And
Like, I
yeah.
I I only think about it from the commercial side. I would not have thought that on the residential side of things, especially in the storm restoration
Yeah.
work, that that
Yeah.
would that would create a great competitive advantage for you guys.
Right. Right.
That's
Right.
fantastic.
Right. Yep. 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 There's a huge, I think where we're starting to really see the biggest payoff is there's a huge multifamily
Mm,
piece to it, right? So, you have a large HOA or twin townhome community or apartment. A lot of those are union jobs. They all want
mm.
union companies owning and shingles and so forth. So that there's when I first got involved with this, I initially kind of was in the mindset, kind of like what you were saying earlier. I was thinking, oh, this is all going to be commercial roofs, flat roofs,
Yeah.
TPO, EPDM, and so forth. And we do that work also, but this was more we're more focused in the multifamily niche when it comes to the bigger stuff and so forth. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Alright, so the biggest question that I'm sure people are thinking around union work you know, is union labor automatically more expensive, right? Do you lose competitiveness in your pricing due to having to pay union
I I
wages
I would
and benefits?
say I would say, 3, 4 years ago, definitely a big difference, right? But with the way the new rules and laws are in play, it's not that much of a difference. Um,
Hmm,
we're not gonna be, I always tell clients when I'm talking to them, I always say, "We're not gonna be the cheapest, and we're not gonna be the highest," because I can't be the cheapest, right? Because I'm a union company, right?
that's right.
But
Yep.
it's the cost, it's not exactly as, bad as it would have been versus 3 or 4 years ago because now, you 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 almost, I guess, if you're none, you almost gotta have a full staff, you gotta have guys that are
That's right.
working for you with how things are structured. There are,
Yeah, the
guys out there
business
that
has moved away the business has moved away from the 1099 model,
correct.
right?
Yep.
We're this industry is very much in or moving towards the W-2 model, right?
Right.
You're gonna
Right.
have people on staff. You're gonna have, all of the things that go along with that.
Yeah.
So that's kinda interesting that you guys got in with the union at that time frame. One of the things that you talked about was people, and I think this is always the topic, right? How do you find good people? How do you how do you hire union labor when you are a union company? Because you have to hire people that are in the union, I'm assuming, maybe I'm off, but
Right. So one of the things that we did when we first got started was the the crews that we had. We kind of went through a process to make sure we understood who they are and so forth.
yep.
Um, and when we decided to move forward with to the union, we actually those guys followed us, and
Mm,
that's how we were able to do it. So we
got
have
it.
we have 12 guys, um, just because um, the union, we bring them in, the union's going to train those guys. They're going to make sure they follow in all the safety procedures because safety, that's a big thing, making sure, the installs are done properly. A lot of your like larger shingle manufacturers actually go to the unions to train these guys. And that's something
Oh,
that a lot of people don't know. But during the winter, a lot of the larger manufacturers, for shingles and your TPO EPDM are actually training our guys one on one, and that was something too, that unfortunately a lot of the guys even that's out there now, none of them, they have that manufacturer training. There are some companies that do it in house, but not a
for
lot,
sure.
you know. Um,
Yep.
so
So you have better what other training? Like, there's safety training, they get, training around so what's cool, what sounds like an advantage here to me also is that you don't have to develop the training curriculum as
correct.
much for
Mhm.
your workforce. So instead of having to develop that in-house, you're a little bit outsourcing that training aspect and making sure that actually, that the person that you're hiring, if they come through that program, that they are, now if you hire someone, let's say you hire someone outside of the union program, can you get them in as like an apprentice or something like that? Is there a path where you guys can recommend, "Hey, I have this person, I want them in this role," can you,
Y-
how does that
Yes.
work?
So yeah, so we do have we can recommend folks to the unions. One of the unique things that we are in the process of developing right now as we speak is, you know, we are looking at some high school kids who are, in their final year, who may not want to go to college, who may not, want to
Mhm,
go to the military, but they're good with, they have the basics of construction, right? So we're looking for guys like that to bring them into the union to get
mm,
that training. And then once they get through that process, we bring them on. We start them all. They come on as an apprentice, and then as they grow with us, just keep going through the different chains.
yeah.
So
That's a fantastic vetting process for hiring.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
'cause
it's just
they gotta jump through some hoops, right? They have
yeah,
to
yeah. It's just if there's a situation where I find out, I have a guy who has been doing, the work for 15, 20 years, and, maybe they want to come on and work, with us or work for us. We do, so you can go through the union, do some testing, and if they meet those qualifications, then they don't always have to start off as a um, apprentice. They can move up one level or two levels,
Mhm,
depending on the experience level, which is great because what happens is a union, they gonna they actually test these guys to make sure what they're saying they can do, right? Like, it's not like
mm,
somebody that's, off the street saying, "Hey, I can do blah blah blah," but the reality is they don't know what they're doing. We actually get to these guys actually go through a process and get tested. And if they, get past those tests and you start, they still have to go through training, right? Like all the
Yep.
guys that we work with, no matter if you are a foreman, a journeyman, you still have to go through the training during the winter so that you can get that continuous education because things change,
Mhm.
right? Like, there's new stuff coming out, a lot of different things like, they have to go through and have to do, throughout the year.
Yeah, that's great. Now, the other thing that I think about, you said, bigger multifamily projects. To me, like when a traditional someone with a traditional contracting model where we hire subcontractors to do the work, we get a big job, we can just go hire more crews,
Right.
right? How does, how does that work in the union flow?
So, um, with the unions, because we are associated with three different unions, right? And specifically two that are, related to roofing. A lot of times what happens is, if there's, another company who does shingles and they have guys who are on the bench, then we can bring those guys in with the crews that we
Hmm,
have to do the bigger projects. That's usually how that works.
okay,
Um, doesn't always work like that, right? Because, things aren't perfect, but normally
that's right.
that's how that works. So,
Okay. So there is an available pool of labor in most cases.
in most cases, depending on the time of
In
the year,
most
yes.
cases, of
Yeah,
course. Yep, of
yeah.
course. We're in Minnesota, so, there'll be a lot of available labor in January,
Oh,
so
yeah. Yep, yep. From November to
Uh,
January, you're right. That's
that's
when
right,
there's
that's
the
right.
most. But fortunately, can't do shingles during that time period, so
That's
gets to be
that's right.
tricky.
Um, how have you, kinda reduced your dependency on the storm restoration work?
Um, that's kind of, I was kind of saying earlier, we've started to make some relationships with some of the bigger general contractors here in town, because if they're building, apartment building or some sort of, remodeling, they're gonna need uh, a roofer, and they will sub it out to us. And then, we have a contract with the state of Minnesota for some shingle projects. So, if there's a park or church or so forth that needs, a shingle roof, they're most likely gonna reach out to us. So we kind
Oh,
of have
okay.
those different challenges that we have kind of started to veer off, versus the storm stuff. We do a decent amount of retail work these days, and so forth. Used to, it's all I used to do.
Yeah.
It's
What
100% that.
how have the changes affected you? Because the insurance industry is changing. How are you like, it sounds like you're positioning yourself in these ways to reduce your dependency on it. How are you because we're in a storm restoration market. How do you continue to benefit from it at the same time you diversify into these other areas? Are there certain things you're doing, or what do you
Yeah,
see
I
in the
mean,
industry? What do you know?
one of the things too, we kind of our website when we first, if you looked at it a couple years ago, it was just all kind of catered toward storm and restoration,
Mm,
right?
mhm.
When you go to the website now, it's not, it's there, but it's not there, right? It's not heavily like pushed. Because sometimes people, that may not want anything to do with that will go to a website and they see that and it turns them off and they go, to someone that they think might specifically work that's not in the industry, in the insurance industry, that specifically does retail. So we've been getting a lot of different leads where people are specifically looking for retail bids, right? So that's one thing that we've done. Also, with us being union, a lot of times the homeowners who are looking for union contractors are not necessarily looking for a storm damage contractor. Matter of fact, they don't even want to
Mm,
hear about it, right? So,
mhm.
just things, it's kind of naturally happening. Like we haven't like
Yeah,
really done a lot of things to change that, but it's just naturally been happening because of the union, because of the
yeah,
website changes and so forth.
nice. What's one mistake you would never repeat again?
I guess the whole accountant thing. And make sure that I do my homework properly on that.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Around that, what is one number every owner should know and be looking at diligently? Or 3, or what are those things that, like, if you're not watching these numbers, you're missing some things.
I would realistically say it's not necessarily numbers, it's how things have been labeled. So
Mm.
when you know,
What
having
are
to
the
go to a
best labels? What are the best
correct.
labels that you wanna make sure are in your QuickBooks now?
Um, you know, works like how they label contractors, like, if you do, obviously we're not subbing things out, but if you are subbing things out, making sure that that work is properly labeled because when you have to deal with work comp, nah, that's an issue. That's a big issue.
It's an issue.
Just making sure all that is done properly. And what happens is if
Yes.
you have a accountant who doesn't understand roofing, that's how you get yourself into a situation because things will get mislabeled. And when you have to deal with workman's comp, fortunately, they don't care. And you have to go
They
through it.
don't care.
They
It's a
don't
it's
care.
a they for some reason, they just want a check. I
Yeah.
don't and here's the check that we want from you
Yep.
based on on the way
Yeah.
you labeled this.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. Even though I didn't do it, but
that's right, and
they
and
want
here
me to
and here's the
pay.
pe and here's the penalties and interest on top of that.
Exactly. Exactly.
Like,
Exactly. So
uh,
my biggest thing
yeah,
is if
that's a big lesson, man.
that is a huge lesson. If you're subbing stuff out, just make sure have somebody that knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because that'll get you in a real tricky situation. So,
And, here's kinda to close it out, what does success in this business look like to you now? Now that you've built the company that you've built, what does success in this business look like to you?
um, for me, I love happy clients. Making a client happy, having a client refer other clients to me, leaving me, the positive reviews. That's what makes me um, feel happy and successful. At this point, at this stage in my career, it's about helping other people. Um, Rather it's someone that's looking to, get in the business or someone that's, a client. Like that's my thing. It's just making other people happy and giving people who want to get in the business a basic foundation, to be able to start off successful, because I had
Yeah.
some of that, but I didn't have a lot of it, and I think that's really important if you're trying to get into the business.
Yeah, pass those lessons on, man. Everyone out there, they're have an abundance mentality. Tell your story, tell the things that you've done well, tell the things that the lessons you've learned and
Right.
along the way, make the path easier for the next person.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time today, Ted, man. This has been another episode of the Roofing Success Podcast. Thank you for tuning into the Roofing Success Podcast. For more valuable content, visit roofingsuccesspodcast.com. While there, check out our sponsors for exclusive offers, shop for merchandise, and sign up for our newsletter for industry updates and tips. Also, join the Roofing Success Facebook group to connect with other professionals and stay updated on the latest trends. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, like, share, and leave a comment. Your support helps us continue to bring you top industry insights. The website link is in the description. Thanks for listening.